Good afternoon once again. It's Thursday afternoon now, Thursday the 16th of April, and tomorrow we end our recess and begin our distance learning classes once again. This is just, again, a little bit of a head start. I'll post this right away today on Thursday, and it applies to last week's topics and leading into this week's topic. So welcome back. I hope people are doing well as best can be expected under these grueling circumstances. But we stay calm and carry on. First, I want to talk about. Oh, by the way, tomorrow I will post tonight an invitation, or post this afternoon an invitation to a meeting, Zoom meeting tomorrow, that we can kind of catch up. I'll check your emails and things like that, and see what kind of questions you have, and also you can come to the meeting live and ask questions, and everybody can get some answers moving forward. Okay, so but by the time you see this, you may be also seeing the invitation for the Zoom meeting, and then over the weekend I'll start marking the work that has come in over the vacation that was due tomorrow, the writing, the discussion boards, etc. Okay. Anyway, so I want to go just back a little bit to go. I'm going to go back to go forward, kind of thing. I just want to point out some things about the Last of the Mohegans. I know we've already talked about this, and this is part of writing number 4. That's due tomorrow night, on Friday night, or Friday, and but I just want to make these points and then transition into this week's lesson. It's the Empire and transition, like the title of chapter 4. Anyway, the American classic, James Fenimore Cooper's The Last of the Mohicans, is an incredibly good story. But it also gives us an opportunity to examine the colonial history. It gives us a good window into the 1750s in colonial New England and colonial North America, British North America, I should say, British and French. We do see the character of Hawkeye, Nathaniel Poe, having both names, having his native name and his English name, having literally being part of both of those worlds, and so he gives us a perspective on British North America and North America in general during this time period. But I want to point out some specific things in the movie that you may have seen, or if you didn't see them, there's still time to pick up on them. You hear the British captain talking to the general, and reminding him that we want to make the world England. Okay. The rivalries between the French and the British will come to a head during these years, and the year 1763 is going to be the pivotal year, okay, in the British Empire and in British North America. In the early scenes, we see the Native Americans, the Mohicans, Uncas and Chinggis Cook, and and Hawkeye. Give me just a second, I have to pause. And I'm back. Pardon the interruption. The doorbell. In the early scenes of just went blank. Excuse me. In the early scenes of Last of the Mohicans, we do see, as I was saying, Uncas and Chingachgook and Hawkeye, and they're hunting a deer. That scene is to give you some idea, and for you to be able to relate to the Native Americans and how they worshiped nature and they respected nature, and that nature was part of the supreme being. Certainly differentiating them from the English settlers who were monotheistic, Christian, and the like, and being the ones that were coming in and interloping. And later on in the next scene, we see them coming to an English settler's home, farmland, and homestead, and being welcomed. Okay, and there again, the English settlers and some of the Native Americans having a relationship, and having feet in both camps. It's the Cameron house, the Cameron family, and we're going to come to find out later on, as you know already if you've seen the movie, that homestead and that farm was attacked and the inhabitants slaughtered. But the Camerons are originally indentured servants from Virginia who make their way north after Cameron acquiring his freedom after having and ending his indentureship. The film gives you the idea that the settlers, the British Americans, if you will, the colonists are very independent. They're very individualistic, and you see that in the way they treat the British redcoats and the British officers, and the way the British officers in general look down their noses at these colonists. They don't consider them British, and they are very put out by the idea that these people, that the malcontents and the people that were pushed out of England, are now claiming their full rights and benefits of being English. A couple of things regarding warfare. Okay, this is the 1750s. You see the flintlock rifle, the long rifle that the Mohicans and the colonists, farmers used for hunting. Okay, it's a long rifle, as opposed to the army issue that the British redcoats would be using. But the same idea. Again, it's a single shot. You get a spark from the flint at the right here. You pull the trigger, and the spark ignites the gunpowder that's on the pan. That flash then drives a musket ball out of the gun and to its target. Okay, and a flintlock pistol would be the same thing. Advancements in artillery, meaning cannons, mortars, and the like, you'll see in the later scenes with Fort William Henry and Fort Ticonderoga. Also, the idea, and you'll see this throughout British military history, something called the British Square is implemented, where you have two lines of soldiers, and uh, one one line has their rifles loaded, and they stand up, they fire, and they advance, and the next line, the one that was in front of them now, it behind them, they stand up, fire, advance. So you're advancing and you're firing and you're reloading, and it's like a machine gun, if you will. And but that's the idea that's implemented throughout. Um, the natives use a combination of war club, hatchet, hatchet tomahawk, um, and pistol and rifle. Um, you see the forts, Fort William and Henry, Fort Ticonderoga. These are European fortifications brought about by military engineers. Um, this is there's the European way of fighting, uh, military tactics of Europe coming over and mixing with um, the natives, both the English and the Native American, English Americans, French Americans, and the Native Americans. Um, the idea is not to stand up and attract attention to yourself and to be shot. You hide and you track. Your the warfare is almost like you are hunting. Okay, you're not going to let the animal know that you're there, so that you can have some kind of surprise advantage. Later on, you're going to see the French. You're going to see actually the Marquis General Montcalm, Montclam, and you'll see how Catholicism and the Roman Catholic Church brought to the world by the French and the Spanish, but in this case the French. You will see a scene where Catholic rituals and Catholic prayers are being demonstrated um, in preparation for the battles. Um, the 7 Years' War and is brought to America by both the French and the British, and that from 1754 to 1763, the 7 Years' War is fought in North America by British Army and British forces, Army and Navy, Marine, and the French forces, Army and Navy, Marine, in combination with Native American tribes, um, the tribes that were allied with the British. With, just give it a second. You can see that the Iroquois and the Oneida, Mohawk are British, and the Huron and Ottawa are allied with the French. Okay, and obviously the Mohawk. The end of this war it culminates in the Battle of Quebec up in what is now Canada, and that is fought. It's a major European style battle between French forces and British forces. Both generals, Marquis Montcalm and the British General Wolfe, are both killed in this Battle of Quebec, and but that is going to actually be the determining battle of this war, and it will then culminate in the Treaty of Paris of 1763. And it's 1763 that, as I said before, is going to be um, the landmark year. Um, it's the high point of, of the first British Empire. Um, the the colonists first came, as we've discussed before. They came for God or profit. Um, uh, they invented their own local legislatures. They set up their own churches. They formed their own militias. We saw that, militias being used to supplement, um, being requested to fight with the British in the movie The Last of the Mohicans. But for a long time, as we've said before, or saying one more time, um, for a very long time there was what was called salutary neglect. Salutory, salutary neglect, meaning that basically the British were, and Great Britain was 6,000 miles away across the Atlantic Ocean. These colonies were on their own. They were acting independently. They were acting very individualistic, and it's not until the British Army comes in full force um, that things start to change in the colonies. Um, and Between 1663 and 1772, the American purchase of British goods rose from 3% to nearly 50%. Okay, so Americans importing goods from Europe, it is 50% of which are British goods. They heavily rely on Great Britain for what they need to live. And 1/3 of all British imports, goods coming from America, um, 1/3 of them the British used. 1/3 of all British imports came from America. So America was exporting 1/3 to Britain. Almost 1/3 of Britain's merchant fleet was constructed in the American colonies, most likely in New England colonies. But the population goes from 1700 in 1700 from 250,000 to nearly 2 million by 1763. Okay, mostly from Britain and the German states. Virginia alone had 300,000 in population. Pennsylvania 350,000 population. You're going to find that Philadelphia is the most populous city. Things start to change, and in the 1660s, where the mercantilism is ratcheted up, but the British colonists first looked at things and they said, well, you know what, whatever taxes we're paying and whatever fees we're paying in tariffs, we can pass that along um, to the consumers, and if we don't like it, we can get around this by smuggling, black market, okay, getting around the import regulations, like the Navigation Acts, the Wool Act, the Molasses Act, and the Iron Acts, because they and the British colonists were looking at this and saying, well, you know what, they're actually noticing us and they're treating us like we're British, and especially in 1763, they are really feeling fully like they're British, and and in, in in being so, they took pride in the victory in 1763 and the Treaty of Paris. They felt that they had contributed greatly to the British victory over the French. Uh, and let me just say this about that. Um, Treaty of Paris of 1763. Um, um, we're going to find that if you look at the map, there is a map um, in chapter 4 about the way the colonies, the 13 colonies, looked in 1763. But you're going to find one significant thing. The most significant thing is that you won't find France on the map of North America. Ramifications of the 7-Year War. France was never again a colonial force in North America. Okay. And at the same time, England, Great Britain was saddled with tremendous debt, and they went into a slide, a recession. Colonial legislatures found themselves in the driver's seat, and the colonial governors were being colonial governors being appointees of the king. They felt that they were figureheads and having less power. And the colonists were feeling their oats in terms of, well, as we said, they had contributed greatly to defeating the French. And you know what? British Army, you can go back to where you came from. We'll take it from here. We can handle all this on our own. So 1763. Also, something that I probably mentioned before, but I'll mention it again: the Proclamation of 1763. And in your book on page 92, you can see the way the map looks. The line that is drawn basically down the Appalachian mountain range to separate the British colonists and keep them hemmed in east and not allowing them to cross and colonize, even though they did, to colonize west. This way, the natives, the Native Americans, and the British colonists would be separated from one another, and therefore hopefully not engage in one another and create problems for the crown. Okay, we'll talk more later at another time about, well, very shortly, of course, about everything coming to a boil in the 1760s and 1770s, and at which time in 1775, April 18th, April 19th, the British are coming, and we're going to have Lexington and Concord, and the first shots fired of the American Revolution.